Tell me about bees. Are you taking care of the bees and the turtle, or is that your wife, kids? Who?
No. My wife has nothing to do with my 100-pound tortoise that I got off.
100 pounds
Yeah, that I
turtle.
got
Oh,
offline.
wow.
Yeah, it just showed up, and my wife. Well, actually, we both had a moment where we thought, "What the hell just happened?" But specifically, I kind of go after pets that you're supposed to not have to take care of on any high level.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, so I ordered from an adoption agency a big tortoise, and so I built it. It's this big thing that roams around my backyard, and it runs into the fences and destroys things. And but yeah, that's my large reptile pet. And then my bees, the bees actually, that was back in the early days of the startup, back in like 2012, where we had this lot nearby where we were. And when in the early days, you don't know what you're doing, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
with your idea, your startup. So you end up having to like find time, you screw it's not screwing around, but you get into these places where you're like almost like nervous to take the next step. And I remember not knowing what to do with the company early on because I had never built technology, and nothing I'd done had ever been even remotely successful. So you find these moments where you're like
Mm-hmm.
lost. And what happens is you end up, you and your co-founders end up finding something kind of fun to do at the office. Sometimes it's, well, whether people pick up smoking or it was one of their
Basically, that's the
coworkers
art of
or
procrastination, right? It's like I have my to-do list. In the meanwhile, I'm
exactly.
finding other to-dos in order to add them into the to-do list, so I will not need to actually do my to-do list.
It's exactly what and it's kind of like, oh crap, well, whatever test we just ran or whatever we did just took too long, or it wasn't successful. So now we need to go outside and tend to our bees. And I think, no joke, my beekeeper, you can have a beekeeper, by the
Mm-hmm.
way. The guy who taught us everything reached out to me on LinkedIn, which is so funny. And he's like, "Hey, are you interested in bees or something?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I am." And then I bought a box of bees from him, and that's how it all started.
Love it, love it.
So it's a good party
Uh-huh.
trick, though. The problem is if you drink too much wine, like let's just say like we're sitting in my house like this is I'm sitting right in my chair in my house. You drink too much wine, and if I'm telling someone, what you usually say though is, "Let's go look
Oh
at them."
God.
Well, the problem with that is you always say that when it's not. You shouldn't go opening up the bees. So, because you're drinking wine, it's the evening. You bring out flashlights. Maybe you light up a cigar to like smoke. You want smoke to kind of help, calm them down. But what happens is inevitably I'll get stung late at night because I shouldn't be opening up their cage, because they think it's basically the bee thinks it's borderline like a raccoon or a skunk or a bear or something. But no, it's just their owner who's drinking wine and figures he'd go open up this box of bees. So the party trick typically ends with me getting stung like on my neck. I'd like to blame my the size of my neck on that, but actually it's just sometimes you end up getting stung. It's kind of funny, and then everyone laughs and you get swollen, and that's the story.
This is going to be episode 53. So we are after ITC, and we already have a tradition that every ITC or one of the pre-workshops is Sureify workshop. So how about before we'll dive into that workshop and talk about how ITC was for you, can you give us a quick description about yourself and what is Sureify?
Yeah, no problem. So Dustin Yoder, I was one of a couple of us who started Sureify back in 2012. We had no idea what we were doing, but 5 years later, Sureify formed into what it is today, which was 2016. We launched a B2B platform for big insurance companies, big and small actually, to sell insurance, service their policyholders, and engage their policyholders. And so ultimately, we have three modules. where we're selling to life and annuity companies to help digitally transform them. I'll call it to meet the 2020 expectations put on everybody. So that's a little right today. It's a 220 person company. And we recently just raised another 15 million. So we raised about 26 million. So that's a little bit of the nuts and bolts or profile of the company.
You started 10 years ago. That's like a pre-lemonade InsureTech revolution.
Yeah, that just shows you how unsuccessful I was. Maybe maybe it was all of them who came and made the field successful. But yeah, no, actually, I technically incorporated in June. I think it was June 2012, which was long before call it the InsureTech revolution. And actually, at the time, I very clearly remember. So the only player that was actually doing something on a more robust level that I recall was one. You had like CoverHound, which was run by Basil, who is now I think the head of insurance at Next. So I saw that recently. That was but I remember like sitting down with him for coffee years ago. And then there was a company called Leaky Out, which was like some car insurance aggregator. But what actually got InsureTech started and was when Parker had gone on to raise like 500 million for Zenefits, and the world. I think that was a very like distinct moment where the world looked at the new rising, insurance, and this was long before all the MGUs and, all these new insurers came, but like said, oh, there's something going on in insurance. So a lot of credit to them, but I was one of the lowly people sitting in a office somewhere with about one other person, dreaming about insurance, but getting very little attention with my lack of success at the time.
Dreaming
I
about
actually started building the
insurance.
Mint.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I was dreaming about insurance, but the problem was I'd never built software or a company before. I was 26 at the time, and I'm coming on 37 now, and I think so. There was a lot of thinking and dreaming going on, but I think I struggled. The amount of movement I make in a month now, I think or the company does, right? I thought, we probably made in, a year or two back then. So, there's a lot to learn, but yeah, we kicked it off actually with the mint.com of insurance. That's actually the first Sureify, although is a B2B company today, the name, the domain, the incorporation has actually been the same. And I did 3 prior models back then, which was the mint.com of insurance to aggregate your insurance to one place, which, mind you, no one wakes up in the morning wanting to do that. So that failed. Then we did a couple of aggregators for auto and life. Quickly moved on from those. Maybe I wasn't any good at it, or secondly, it wasn't something I believed in at the time. And then built a life insurance learning platform. And then we actually were going from all of that into building a new life product. And that's when, which was a personalized premium product, kind of like Vitality's policy that based on your health, you can get discounts, etc. So then we officially flipped. Hanover refunded us, and that's where I am today. But so I had a long list of failures during that time. I think I spent 2 years trying to re-educate people what I was actually doing when things started to move in the right direction.
I love it. It's very humble and very, I would say, conscious of you to talk about all of the stuff, and which already set it up. Okay, great. So what are all the lessons that you learned as a founder? Because it's not just, we love to wrap it. It's like, oh, I struggled all the way, and now there is a success, and there is a team. And you talked about 220 are in your team now?
Yes.
That's very impressive, building a company of 200 people. So let's talk about more on the success and not just about, hey, that was another failure that I learned from. Unless
Well, the failures are the thing that everyone wants to hear
I
about.
know.
Let's be honest.
Yes,
The
love it.
failures.
So let's
The
talk about the
failures.
failure and what did you learn? Because, people always talk about their success and, oh my God, another company just raised $50 million at a $200 million
Right. I
valuation.
didn't learn anything. I haven't learned a damn
Okay.
thing from the successes. All you do when you succeed is you pray, you thank God that you succeeded, and you clap and you think, yes, not another failure. But so the reality is you don't learn anything there. You're just happy it wasn't another hard lesson. But all the hard lessons are likely leading to your moments, your rare moments of success. So I'm definitely more. Uh, I'm definitely more fall under the buckets of a lot of hard lessons to get to one success. And each time it's always, one success. I mean, I can tell you that I've known 300 investors I've met
Wow.
with to get to at 3 different times raising money. In case anyone's wondering, that's a very, very low probability or success rate there too. So I have a long history of maybe what I would call low probability events, and then I basically have to conduct them 100 times to get to a success.
Now, because this is going
So
to be published on LinkedIn and on YouTube and Spotify and all other locations, let's talk more about your failures because people really love that.
yeah, they
I
do.
know,
They do.
it's
We
great.
all love it.
We love it because it's drama. It's
You know
one
what?
of the things that,
I like it too.
huh?
I like it too. I like it too. I don't like, there's nothing, the successes, you get summed up in like one line, like, your revenue's this, or your the amount of money you raised, or an employee count, all the things that we're kind of
Hmm.
mentioning, right? Well, in actuality, like, there's nothing to learn from that. It just says that, right? But the failures, the things that when you're sitting around with your real friends and or people like yourself that have known me for a long time, it's like, well, you've seen the
Yeah.
chaos and you've seen it. I mean, that's the good stuff.
I've been sitting on and I started to do research about a book which is all about failures. I even have a nice title for it, 9 out of 10, which is actually supposed to be 99 out of 100 startups fail, and how companies deal with the failure, what was the reason for the failure, those who reach the purgatory of startups, which means we are there but we are not there and don't know how to cut their loss. Because every time that we hear, the only thing that we hear about is success. And even the success itself, people like to manipulate it a little bit, right? So it will be, as we talked about the different KPIs, how much money you raised, how much employees work for you or make this operation operate. And then it's like, yeah, so how much revenue you have and how much profit. And as we know, for startups, many Silicon Valley startups, profit is not good. Revenue is good. Profit is not, right?
Right. Top line. It's all about the
It's all
top
about the
line.
valuation because while you're in speculation, it's great, But so give us an interesting failure that you learned from or didn't learn from.
All right. Well, let me start with, like, I had the beginning bunch of failures were all when I was targeting D to C. So, like, I think, so I'll give you a couple. So for starters, I think my general theme of failure has to do with recognizing that, well, what I realized, I'll give you the
Sure.
punchline. If someone doesn't wake up in the morning wanting what you're offering, innate, they wake up and they want it. Whether, I always say the rule, this is not a uncommon saying, but the rule, the world is ruled by pain and pleasure, right? So usually the person waking up in the morning is seeking resolution of pain or pursuit of pleasure. But long story short, if you're building a B2C company, like, you need to find out, and you need to determine if, like, that is your solution is solving one of those two things. So I would say that's the punchline. Now, the way I found it out was actually really interesting. And one example, I'd spent like a year trying to build our mint.com of insurance. And I had done, and I just read, so I was building that. I was trying to figure out how to do that. When I say building something, then it is very different than now, where I would just build it. Then it was like figuring out what it even was to build software. We were building in Ruby. I had a developer, I had a designer, a couple team members. Well, the punchline of this failure took a long time to get to, because what usually a founder does is they focus on their product and they don't get outside of the building, right? And the Steve Blank always said, or his famous line is, get outside the building. Like, ultimately customer discovery is going to guide you to the answer. But a lot of times with software, people hide inside the building thinking that when they release it, it's going to, like, like
everyone
the
is
famous
going,
saying, like a church, like
everyone is going to use
everyone's
it.
going to come, right?
Everyone.
Right.
And word of mouth.
Well, so,
oh yes, they will hear about it from this mysterious.
Right. Yeah. So this is what people think, right? And once again, I was 26. I didn't know what I was doing. And at the end of the day, you're afraid to get outside of the building. That's kind of what you are. But I went to Europe for vacation or backpacking or something, and I was with my wife. Actually, I got married at 23. So I'd got that. The good news for me was I could focus on this kind of stuff. And so we go to Europe, maybe for a wedding or something like that. My cousins live there. And I bring Steve Blank's book called The Startup Owner's Manual, which is basically like the science book of startup customer discovery versus like Eric Ries's The Lean Startup, right? But I bought the science book, right? And I, got signed from it, and I was super excited. So I read the damn thing, and it was amazing. I really liked it, and it really secured kind of a methodology to doing this. So what do you do after you read a book? I mean, I could have just done the thing, but I read the book first. And then I conducted this experiment with my friends, which was, we had a competition. There was these guys that ran a company called Real Scout, Michael and Andrew. They're a real estate tech company. And then me and my buddy Andy, who were doing Sureify at the time, we had a competition to do customer discovery. The most basic thing, the thing I had to read a whole book for, was you basically interview as many people as you can on your idea. It's really hard. It's funny, like, everyone claims to do it and they just don't do it enough. So we were building the software. It was taking forever. So we had this competition to do it. And we had like 5 value props of what people want and think of when they think of their insurance. And it was like, get cheaper insurance, I don't know, understand it more, make it more friction. I don't know. We had all these value propositions, and we asked in this customer discovery, the last thing we asked, or one of them, was rate these in the order from 1 to 5. So they had to select out of the 5, they had to put a 1 to 5. Well, one of those was aggregate all your insurance to one place, which was the value prop that we had at themint.com. Like, basically, put your insurance in one place. Well, the punchline of this story that took me a long time to tell was that when we were done with like 48 interviews, and our friends, they did 49, so we had to buy them this really nice dinner, which we didn't have money then, so that was the big whole, that was the competition. Well, what happened was, everyone out of all those 5 value propositions we could be pursuing in insurance for customers or consumers, aggregating insurance to one place was the lowest rated thing, meaning like it was the least thing that they actually wanted to do. And so instead of asking someone just on the street, do you want to aggregate your insurance to one place, or would you like to do that like Mint does with finances, we basically forced them to select value propositions and put them in order. And what you end up getting there is a realistic view. Instead of your friend telling you, oh, good idea, you get people to aggregate a view where they put a bunch of things in front of the very idea you're spending your life on. And long story short, I think that was we were feeling some level of that at the time, but that really crystallized. That was the first pivot. The only follow-up story that's much shorter is I then tried to build a life insurance learning platform. And then the joke after that one was, no one wakes up in the morning wanting to learn about life insurance. So going back to the punchline statement of like, you need to focus on solving big problems that people wake up in the morning wanting to do. I think those were like big learnings in the direct to consumer market. So I have those were kind of fun failures because they're punchy. Everyone understands, how maybe dumb my ideas were or whatever. But hence they're a little easier to tell. I mean, there's a lot. I tried to go one other just use case, and feel free to ask me anything, but I tried to go global. I was open to going global sooner. That's always a famous mistake of founders. So as we had gained traction in the B2B market, this is the model now. I think we were much more open to going global sooner, because you're just looking for anything and everything to drive your success. And I think that was, looking back, I think you spend good money doing that. I ran all over Asia, learning a lot, but ultimately never, besides some of the work we do and have done in Japan now, I think that was a bit early, and rather like through plug and play and some other things, a lot of that's how we got our Japanese-based connections were with the life insurance companies, was actually through plug and play.
Yeah, we'll give a shout out to Plug and Play Japan. Fantastic work.
Yeah. So somehow, why I'm saying that is I ran around doing all this in Asia, and actually I probably should have been, and I was spending hard raised money, right? Looking back, maybe I should have been just continuing to focus on a market to get it right. I have a laundry list of learning. Yeah. So.
Cool. So let's ask, I touched a little bit earlier about ITC. Well, I need to give a lot of love to the ITC folks, besides being part of a consultant, sort of an advisor actually, to the team. So your workshop, your pre-conference workshop, that's sort of a tradition now. And it's funny enough, I think that only in 2018 I managed to sample it. And after that I was a founder and then part of the organizer. So I didn't really have an opportunity to check it out on 19 and 21. What is going on there? Because it's like under such a security with Hanover Re, you have like people there with, full armor, making sure that no one else can enter that.
No, actually, you could have probably just walked in. Let's start there. But what would be a good conference without knowing who's there? Let's start there.
Okay, let's talk about it. Because they were good. I can't remember in which year they were giving cookies, and it was all about getting one of those cookies.
So that might have been 19. Okay. I think we ran security hard in 19, but this is much more an open event now. So so here's the short of it. ITC is I can't tell you an event that I love more personally. Why? Because not only is it great on all the discussions, but ultimately all your friends from around the world and in insurance and in InsureTech and in other things come to Vegas. And so I love it. Well, what we found though was that if you look at the early years, there was always a massive underrepresentation and focus on life and annuity and those peripheral products. At the end of the day, like 80+% was all PnC. I would say pretty low on health insurance, right? Because they have their own kind of conferences, it seems, and so PnC like ruled the world, and life and health was like its side little stepchild. So we are only life and annuity, and we feel strongly that we want to bring everyone to Vegas, right, and talk about life and annuity issues and bring everyone there. So long story short, we just decided that the best approach for us was to start inviting to put on an event that was just about life and annuity. So you really had a reason to go and engage in Vegas on top of everything else that you could do at ITC. And so we throw the pre-conference the day before. And it's been very successful. I think we had 600 this year attend just our pre-conference, which is a lot. We end up having a lot of conversations prior to, because we do the marketing and invite everyone in the industry. And so we invite a lot of non-traditional people that may not get the ITC invite. So it's all about everything there is life and annuity. We throw it like it's our own prior event to ITC. So it's all the talks, all the sponsors, all the, you name it, right? All the partners that are involved, they're all life and annuity. So it's been really good. I think we had like 419. We had 600. We actually did virtual and in person this year too. Because we didn't know, no one knew how it was going to go down. So it was super beneficial. We're very glad we did it, and next year we got to get 1,000 people out from the life and annuity division, like divisions of companies, right? I don't know if you know this. There's 450 registered life and annuity companies. That's not even on top of all the ones that are like have dual domicile in New York and other. This is talking about like singular sources of releasing products. So there's a lot of people out there that in the life and annuity space that need to come and
I think that actually the number is way higher, because when we look at, maybe you already granulated it or look into the smaller resolution, because there are
I've been a nerd about it.
Because I'm usually looking
at North America. Sorry, I want to clarify.
Okay.
450. There's 650 AM Best registered, like let's say, or 657. But those, when you break it down into what are actual individual companies in North America, it's about 450.
Yeah, because I'm looking usually on the name.
Now globally, there's 2,000 probably.
Yeah. Okay. And I would say that 200 of them are basically have 50% of the market. And we can dive into those statistics, because I usually look at the NICS reports, and from there you have like almost 10,000 companies. So it's 9,960 something, right? And from there, then you look at, okay, great, who is actually domiciled here? And their tables are very, very long and very, very confusing. But let's go with all your numbers for today, because hey, why not? It's great.
So we've diced it one by one on ththose lists. Like we've had to get really nerdy, right? And so anyone that's even owned by another or whatever, you remove, and you want to break it down to say what's our addressable market to serve. So if anybody has better numbers, including you, let's compare Excels. But
I'm going by the group.
No, but
so you have the groups, and then you have the subgroups, and then it comes to each state. You may have it under a different name, and then
they got all that.
Oh my God! I think that the worst thing that I need to find a really good AI solution is name matching. So do that. We have the official name, the name that someone is entering, all kinds of different names that we see there.
We had to do that
manually.
We had to do it, and then we created a key also to where now not only do we have names, because we have to do the duping and deduping, but we have an individual who reviews them. We also run them through a system, and we created our own like number key of each person, because we were having the same thing. The name changes, the state, like most people that can distribute in 2 states have to set up a separate entity, or they own 3 people that have largely merged together. So that other one doesn't even make sense. So I think no one spent more time in the life and annuity space than us, because I always say you better be able to talk to the whole industry with a click of a button. And so that has led me on a mission to know.
It's a huge challenge. It's
what's
a huge,
real.
Huge challenge. Even from, let's say, from the conference side, or from organizing or reaching out, it's part of my work. If it's from working with the carriers, the investors, the startups, and I'm looking, and then you have a company that comes in, especially when we're dealing with the bigger insurers, they will have their venture arm. They will have all kinds of things. How do you categorize? How do you map them? Are you doing that by domain name? The email domain name, then it's the same company, but that's the venture arm. Oh, and this is the legacy email that someone is still using, but they're not using that. They use that in, 2017, and now we have something else. But yeah, it's one of those problems that we like to talk about. But let's go back and talk about you, and not all the.
You want to go talk? You want to go talk about my failures?
Oh no, I was actually going to talk about, we touched a little bit about the workshop, but what did you actually talk about in the workshop? Can you give an example?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the things that were talked about, but I also will highlight like what we did a post-mortem too, right? And so I think the question is, what does everyone want to talk about? That's always the interesting question. So for starters, we had a Forrester briefing, which I think it's always a good way to kick off, right? Like everyone wants to know the state of the industry. I create those kind of stuff myself, because no one really creates it in life and annuity as much. So we definitely kicked it off with like the state of the industry, which is always fun to see, and suggested direction or predictions. I know there were definitely some of that going on main stages, but I think once again in Life and Annuity, it's very different from some of those. We did sessions. So what it was like, we even did, I had people that were even doing announcements. So we had like a Between Two Ferns, like sit down with the
Oh
team
my
at
God, I
Haven
love
Life.
it. Between two ferns. That sounds
Yeah. So
way better than, oh, we're going to have a side chat, a fireside chat.
exactly. So I said, let's do Between Two Ferns. So it was me with the Haven
Yeah.
team, and it was super fun because also like I'm putting, the one thing I'll highlight is like we're putting competitors on the stage. We're putting like there's a lot like we want to put on a true life event. So that was like people were like after they're like, why are you sitting with Haven as they announce potentially, competing B2B products or whatever. And I said, because this is an event, like as if like not putting them number one, trying to control a stage would make any sense. But number two, it's like we might be able to partner, but more importantly, the industry is coming to an event to talk about life insurance, what's emerging. So our goal was to say who had like the same thing you asked me, like what's happening in the space. Do you have announcements, things? We kind of asked everyone who wants to get on and make that stuff happen. I will tell you what people really want to see is they want to see use cases. The most uh, desired or like sessions are when you're taking, because this thing is largely for life insurers. That's one clarifying point I want to make. So the people there are trying to see like what solutions like are emerging or they should be paying attention to, which vendors are working with other players. They want to assemble these and they want to see what's coming or what's working. And so I will tell you one of the most interesting sessions was with, and one that people liked was with Swiss Re, Sureify, Allstate, Human API. I don't know if there's anybody else, but long story short, talking about all these different, like how these solutions came together, all the different aspects of them, the challenges. It was interesting putting everyone on stage, and actually that was a dual on stage and digital. But long story short, people wanted to know what came of it. How long did it take? What were the successes? So I always think the most interested, the sessions and things that are most interesting tend to be that which gives real world application to all the things people want to know. No one wants the sales pitches or the fluffy stuff. They want to know, and they want to have real time questions, and they want to do people want to learn something.
And especially if you bring competitors, which is great. I love that. Use cases, competitors, actual conversation.
We had competitors back to back.
No.
Yeah, we had competitors back to back, meaning not they were competitors with each other. Then we had I sat on stage with competitors. I mean, you mix it all up, and isn't that what people want anyway? Is a real discussion. We were thinking next year, by the way, to put competitors do these jam sessions or where you put 4 chairs of competitors and then you do hotspot question and answering.
I'm so happy.
Just make it
I'm so happy that you're doing that and not a battle to the death or the first one who sells.
Well, please. Right, exactly. I mean, there could be dunk tanks or something involved to make it more exciting, but and maybe give everyone a couple shots before or something. But long story short, you can see it's pretty easy to pick up on what people want, because half the time when you go to a conference, you just ask yourself pretty basic stuff. What do I want? I want real conversation. I want to know real examples. I don't want sales pitches. It's pretty easy to go down. And then the question is, how do you make it come together into a good event?
Fantastic. So you mentioned that Haven Life were there and they're moving to B2B. How does it work? Because they are like a subsidiary of a Mass Mutual or one of the mutuals in the East Coast.
Yeah. So to your point, they're a Mass Mutual subsidiary. And then now they've started Haven Tech. That's what they were announcing on stage, was they were starting, I think, and I don't want to misspeak, but I think it's called Haven Tech, which they are taking the systems that they've built, policy admin, underwriting, some other things, and then selling them to the market to other
I wonder if
insurers.
that's going to work, because
So
basically
that,
they're going to empower. No, and I'll tell you what, and I will be happy to bring I forgot his name, Guy something. I'll be happy to bring him to the podcast, because that's a very interesting, because we've seen, the InsureTech startups that created everything from scratch, and now they are selling their product, or their internal core system for, here is a lightweight solution that you can quickly, I don't know,
right.
bring up a product and sell it, and it will be outside of your legacy core system, right? Something like that. And I always wonder if it's a signal that, yeah, we failed at selling insurance policies. And it's very weird to me to see that a subsidiary is doing that as well. And I wonder if it's a
Yeah, I don't know if the assumption when anybody adds a line or moves their business is they failed. I think if you shut down a line of business, you failed. I am seeing a lot of people, because of valuations and things being so high, which this is almost like parallel to the discussion of Haven, because they're not, this is not the reason they'd be doing it, but I'd see a lot of people taking money need to grow
Mhm.
significantly. And so usually, so because of that, they're looking to reach in lines of business. Like, plain and simple, they're looking to drive more dollars through the machine. And so when they're creating these separate lines, I don't know if that rather means they failed, or there's a reality to the TAM or SAM that they can serve in that market, and it's going to come in time, and they need to double down or triple revenues and things that they're doing. So I think that's what you're seeing. I actually just I was sitting down earlier reading TechCrunch about that company Roman, and they were talking about some, I don't know, people were disgruntled there. There's disgruntled workers about growth and whatever, but what it came down to is, well, Roman was building out, they had a mainline
Mhm.
product, and now they've added like 5 to it. And why? Because they're a multi-billion valuation and they need to massively drive revenue. So it doesn't, their initial product, Roman, was like a men focused erectile dysfunction pill, right? That's like a whatever, what's there's a famous
The
one.
Pfizer one.
Well, this is yeah, this is now there's a subscription based
Mhm.
Roman, right? That's direct mail order. Well, that is still their main line of business. They've opened up 5 or 6 other massive lines, or sorry, new products. But the whole article is basically about how their main line of business is the one that's succeeding, but everyone's getting their ass kicked trying to do another 5 others that aren't succeeding or haven't succeeded in the same way. So I don't know. I think, like, I count, like, because you never know what's behind the hood. I'm
Yes, I
always
agree.
I'm always
Yeah,
careful to
I agree.
suggest
But
failure or
mhm.
not.
But I tell you what, because this conversation was set on, oh, let's talk about failure. That's the base assumption. Now, it can be for hundreds of different reasons why Haven took that approach. Maybe they recognize that they can develop it, and because in terms of the balance sheet, that budget, it's super simple, and they already created it. So spinning it and using it in the mother company or the home company, and then reusing that will open up, and will open up a new SOM for them, which is fantastic. That's even better, right? But there are always a question, why and how, and what is the timing that you introduce a new product. Hey, think about Slack. Slack
Yeah.
is
No,
super famous that it was a gaming company, a failing gaming company, that Slack was an internal project. And now Slack is, you know, it's a triple
yeah.
unicorn.
Instagram's the same thing, right? Yeah, everybody has I think there's always part of that story. I just don't know in the insurance. I think, like, I mean, I started out, all my initial ideas slash projects were all D2C, right? I ended up B2B. Then you see a lot of these B2B, sorry, B2C, D2C companies adding lines or expanding into B2B. The question, to your point, is it failing, or do they think their name, their technology, and their capabilities are so robust and expanded that they want to offer them in the market? Hard for me to say. I think it's interesting to watch.
It
I
is.
think actually there's a One Inc. Have you heard of One
Yep.
Inc? The payments company,
Billing.
if I'm not mistaken.
They are
What's
focused
that?
on billing and they provide this one platform to deal
Yeah,
with everything.
billing.
There is
Well,
difference between billing and
right.
payments, right? But they do.
I thought they dealt with payments,
I
but
think that
I thought
sure,
that was
why
part
not? Maybe it's all of it because it's one
of. Okay,
one.
you know,
Yeah.
you know more than me, but I think that the point here I heard, or that I think part of their story is they were working in the policy admin space and then transferred over into really focusing on payments. I think that's because things sometimes become more clear, and you find, either bigger or better opportunities to go along with your initial
Of course,
hypothesis.
and
Which I've been a part of at our company many a times, is you know you think one thing, and the other thing hits you in the face, or becomes very, very pressing
oh,
to
and
do.
believe me, I can tell you about failures and learning from failures. And one of the things that still drives me crazy from time to time is closing my own startup. So it took us, the pivoting to figure out where do we actually fit. We started Abound was all about an infrastructure. It was the first embedded insurance platform, which the whole idea was, can we embed in digital touch points where people actually think about insurance? Because as you said, it's like, I don't wake up and think about, oh my God, I need insurance. But then in that digital touch point, I go like, oh yeah, I should add that insurance, right? And the airline's been doing that for years and years and years, right? You buy an airline that, hey, you need to check out that you don't want insurance rather than tick in that you want insurance. Big difference in terms of user behavior. And needless to say, sadly, COVID hit us in the worst timing, just in the middle of a round, burn rate, etc., etc. And today, or not today, in the past 2 years, I think that embedded insurance became such a big buzzword.
Yeah, it's like the hottest
And
topic,
I'm
right?
like, yeah, I'm still having emails coming in. It's like, hey, we would really like to get a demo. And it's like, yeah. Or investor is like, oh, would you mind like sending you a deck for it? And like, I would love to. However, the team, and I look at the technology is there. I still have like one server for ego purposes still running somewhere. But a company is the team. And my point
Right.
is like, yeah, well, I was the founder and I'm not Louis the 14, right? I cannot say I'm the people and the people are me. A company is the team that you build, and this is why that will be my segue to your 200 plus team and how you build them, how you build that team. I cannot pick up the phone today and say, okay guys, we are back on. I just raised that $4 million that we were, it's like in the middle of, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, team, to your point, team is everything. You just realize the longer things go on, how if you're gonna scale too, like if you're actually going to grow materially, then it becomes more and more team, which is kind of interesting. In the beginning, right, you got to be the one to wake up every day and get everyone going, or sell the idea to people to join you, etc. But the way I think we've had two big moments of team that are worth mentioning. The first part was I had started a consulting firm before this. No, sorry, not before this. When I failed at one of the times on one of the kickoffs of Sureify, um, let's say it was like 2013 or 14. So I'd already failed completely, kind of stopped what I was doing. Um, I I basically started a consulting firm to try to make money, to fund future ideas, and keep the Sureify idea going. Well, I was able. So the thing I will say is I was able to pay, uh, like what we called ourselves was a ragtag team to build the early stages of Sureify. So one thing nowadays the market expects you to have a product of some kind, it seems, to get funding. Um, and like, so when anyone comes and they have an idea, right, we know it's very hard to raise money off an idea. Well, the nice part for me is I had a agency I had built so I was selling, design and build projects to companies around the Bay Area to build their internal innovation. So I had learned enough to build other people's stuff. I just hadn't built a software company that was successful. I built a software build company that started to be okay. Well, I at least knew what I had at that point. That's the real answer to you, is that I knew I had a team of hardworking team members that I loved, and we had built a bunch of different things together. So what I did was, in short, I said, hey, let's build. We don't want to be a build company our whole life. Let's build this product over here that I have an idea for. And so those people that I had accumulated, that we had built a small office here in the Bay, we started building the first version. So I kind of didn't do the traditional, I have an idea, let's build it, and we got money, but rather I built a side company that was really our full-time gig that we used to fund the initial idea. So that was, and then when the company launched, I basically when Sureify got funding, we went in with the group of those, there was about 6 people that were like founders there, or my core team at the agency that we spun over to be core founders at Sureify. So I said, hey, like, I know I own, at the time I'd owned both, like from a technical standpoint, I'd owned both companies, but I knew building a company is all about the team you have. So I said, hey, listen, let's move from like a paying employee to a founder team member. And so we actually shifted over. So I actually started, I think what really got me through everything to where we are today is I started with like 6 co-founders. Wow. Now I was the one initially paying, and from an equity standpoint, I had kind of owned everything initially, but then we distributed that up. So I got really lucky. I liked having, usually people start with like a co-founder, one co-founder or 2, whether it's the business, the design, and the engineering. I ended up getting really lucky starting with 6. And that's part of our story at Sureify, is a little less common.
Do you know all the 200 that work for you now?
Say that again?
Do you know all the 200 that work for you now?
Well, so it's made it more difficult because we've hired 100 since COVID started. So that's my real answer. So in the last 2 years, we've hired 100. Or less than that. So no, and they're spread out. We only have 20 in the Bay Area. So my answer to you is no, I don't personally sit down with I still do one-on-ones across the company. I'm doing, I don't know what the number is, but it's got to be upwards of like 40 a month or 30 a month, which is a lot. So I do a lot, and then I do a lot of like group stuff. But no, we haven't. I haven't been on site with a large portion of people for a long time. We've done small stuff like ITC. We had 25 or something.
So we passed the 45 mark, and I would say almost the 50 minutes mark in. So last question before I ask the last question. And it's something that, I'm advisor to a few startups and working with all kinds of entrepreneurs that reach out. It's like, hey, what do you think about XYZ? And that's one of the things that really, I really like and enjoy, right? I'm a innovation mentor with Sumitomo America, so dealing with something which is not insurance. I'm working with all kinds of entrepreneurs and investors, and I really love what I do within the ecosystem. So recently it came up over and over again, and it's a question of, especially with a very rapid growth, like you've noticed, and during COVID, where people are scattered all over. How do you inject ownership to these employees? How you make them to take responsibility for what they do so they can do it right?
That is a really good and a really hard question, because
I know, that's why I wanted to have at least one serious question.
Say the heart and mind of the person is not controlled by any one person or even the company, right? One of my
Mm-hmm.
ways, actually, I'll tell you a couple like my philosophies. Number one, I don't believe anybody works for anybody. They may have the mind, they may believe they do because the paper or something tells them they do. But if you really look in the tech world, for starters, everyone works for themselves, right? Meaning I can leave today. You can, like, anybody that works at Sureify can leave today and go work somewhere else. Anybody. No one cannot get another paying role. They could also start their own company, whatever. So I'll start by saying making sure that people know that we're on a team and that I understand their value and I feel humbled and happy that they work at the company. I think, and I sincerely mean that because I know that they have a choice. I think that goes a long way with us being on the same page to say, I feel really lucky I got to start the company. It's been a lot of hard work, but you're choosing to be here. I mean, most of the people that work here are more educated than I am. Many of them have much longer careers than I do. I think there's about acknowledging that, like, we want people here that want to be here. You're on this mission because you're choosing to be with us, and I hope that we can inspire you to greatness here. But I think number one is just recognizing that you're not, like, I'm not their employer. Number one, the company employs me too, if we're really technical about it. And two, like, they're on a mission. I could be fired tomorrow as well, I think. But the point is like, we want people to join us that want to be there, and I think there's a way, making sure that everyone knows the mission and also knows your mentality on their value, and knowing that, like, they can do as they choose. I think creates a different level of responsibility and motivation. I also think people say that culture is one of the biggest strengths of Sureify. We even have a culture committee that really works to look at what are the pillars or values that we have, principles that we have that are deeper than, like, writing something on a piece of paper, like gym membership or something. And I think the lived out culture that we all live with one another really helps to motivate, attract, and retain us together, because at the end of the day we all work so much in our lives that we want to be surrounded with people that we literally would like to go get a beer with or a coffee. We want to talk to on a call like this. Like, I could talk, we've been on for an hour. I could talk to you for hours, right? Like, when you find those people and people walk into our company and feel during the interview process or whatever that they actually would want to, like, hang out, or they actually would enjoy the on-site and they're, like, wanting to be there. I think that's how you build a good culture. And some would say that, like, I'm a pretty, you've known me for years. Like, I've always worn who I am on my sleeve.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many people are not attracted to that. But I want our company to be a place where it's honest and people can be themselves. And, like, I have, like, night meetings sometimes and we all drink wine, or I drink wine. The honesty of where we're at and the hard things we're going through. So I think there's something there that is just our path and our culture that has attracted people. COVID has made that harder. I just want to make a statement to everybody if they're experiencing that. COVID has made it harder because if we're just on a podcast right now, but you and I
Mm-hmm.
have never been together in person, which we've been together many a times, it is harder to feel that person and to really know their intent. So I think we're really looking forward to that family feel that we had in the beginning and really securing who we are together. But you just got to be yourself. I think screens have the ability to shut people down in them living out who they are. And I really like to suggest we bring it out. And we do that a lot of different. The team has been attracted to the early days of our culture. And then now we have this a repeating cycle of everyone wanting to live out the type of people that we are or would like to be. And so it's created, like, like, most people at the company are way more fun than me, although I'll be the first to, like, have a good time or to let humor be part of our company, or to just, like, be real people. I always say, like, we're real people, so let's cut the bullshit.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking
And
for. I'm looking for real people.
let me ask you the last question, because as you said, we can talk for hours and there are still so many different topics that we can chat, but it's almost an hour. So let me ask you the last question that I'm asking everyone, which is, please give us a recommendation or something, a life hack. It can be a recommendation about a movie, a book, a life hack of how to handle bees, or
All right.
why would you grow a yard and some sort of, if you have a tortoise that will eat it.
So my life hack is going to be boring, but I had someone send me a note today um, that they said like my mentality around business development and like my funnel analysis when it comes to solving problems or building a business is something he was still using. He's an investor now, so it made me feel special because he was actually from Europe and he came and hung out with me, and I said, well, he was at the time, I think he was looking for a job, and we basically, I have a funnel mentality to everything I do, which is that I look at the probability, I find a realistic probability on outcome, and then I always want to ensure the math aligns with my behavior. So, this is my life hack is many people get their probabilities wrong or don't understand funnel theory, in which if you're getting a job, they misunderstand how many jobs they must apply for to get one. Or if they're raising money, they don't realize the reality of how many active meetings or average time frame it takes. Or if they're building
Mm-hmm.
software, they misappropriate how long it takes. So what I hack one is the realistic funnel analysis of everything you do, which is to understand how many inputs you need to have one positive output. And I do this with, like, if someone comes to me and says they're trying to find a job, I actually built out a funnel for how many different coffee meetings, outbound notes, introductions they need to have to get one job. And I think that goes the same thing for anyone listening about like building a company or raising money or whatever. I think they really need to become a student of what the probability of success is. As you said, your book was called like 99 to 1 or 9
9
out
to
of
10, 9 out of 10.
right, but
Well,
you're
it's
saying the reality is 99 to 1, and that
99. Yeah.
what that really goes to show is that, but if you ask people about starting companies or everyone thinking they're going to be successful, they have a bad probability in their head. Like they have the wrong math associated at how easy it will be. And so I say that any goal someone has, my short life hack is to start with recognizing the probability of success and then applying the proper inputs, i.e., if you need to send 100 notes for one response, but yet you come and talk to me and you've sent 10, then usually what I find is they need to send 100. They're missing 90, right? And so people complain about the lack of success, but they don't realize how hard they have to try to get out the end result. And so I bring that up as a hack because I feel many people give up too soon or don't apply the proper tactics to get a positive result because they have a false reality of how many inputs they need for success. And so
I
if you
love it.
take that as
Hmm.
anything in life, it's actually pretty easy when I'm talking to myself or other people when we're having a problem. The hack is, am I applying the right inputs and the amount of them? And two, if I do that, then I'll be successful. I'd say it's a fair hack. Hacks don't always work. They're just they're shortcuts to set your expectations or get a good result.
I would say that that's something very similar to what I heard back in the day from Aaron Shift. He was a CEO and co-founder of Medical Insurance. Now he's COO of Easy Health, also here in Los Angeles. And his point or his hack, same thing, which was like, listen, when you're raising money, think about it as a process, understand the funnel, know that you need to talk to hundreds of investors until you'll get the investment and the valuation that you're looking for. It's almost like dating, how much you swipe right, but maybe that's a very bad analogy. The only other thing that I will add to that.
Well, the problem is they hear a story about their friend that swiped right.
I was going there.
Yes. Yeah, they always hear the story about something, and stories are bullshit. Like, if you're reading TechCrunch or Tech News,
oh my God,
understand a process, then you're talking. That's why I like to surround myself. I always feel fortunate that when one of my friends is really successful, and I'm cheering because we all know the backstory. But every good successful entrepreneur, which I'm not, but I'd love to be, is hanging out with a bunch of real people that know how hard it is. And the reason they keep going is because they know what they need to do. They know that if you want to be the best marathoner in the world, you have to typically run a lot of them and train. And this is the same thing. Like, it is laughable how many investors I know, and many investors, joke with me about the times I met with them early on because I was a young kid not knowing what he was doing. But that's what I had to do. That was the process. And then you meet someone and they've met with 5 people. And I'm always like, well, that's great. Sometimes there were days I met with 5 investors in one day. So like, maybe it could be that you're so good that you're going to cheat the math. But I think a better assumption in life is to seek out the right probability and apply. And everyone thinks, like timing's big. Like you talk about embedded insurance, that's like the hottest damn topic of the day right now. And yet, a couple years ago when you started, it was not. And secondly, you can look at, I started the D2C life insurance game years ago, and that's one of the most heavily invested in things today, or at least you hear the Ethos, Fabric, Bestow, Ladder. Well, not one of them existed when I started, and I was trying to raise money on it. And it was me, probably. Those guys are all very smart and successful, and guys and gals are successful and all the above. However, maybe, it sure as hell wasn't the right time either, because, this wasn't a thing. And so, that's okay. You keep going.
And that's the biggest lesson. You must keep going. Although I will contradict that with, a poker analogy that you need to know how to read the table, read the pot, and then ask yourself, because we are all risk averse, sort of, but we also, no, not risk averse. We know how to calculate our risk and very risk savvy when you cut your losses, which is...
You're 100% right. And I think I did that 4 times in my pivots, and then I would stop. And so I think
we pivot several times.
You have to know when to stop and then start again. And then if you don't have the next big thing, then you got to stop. But I think there's, I always told people I wasn't done. Like the company I left to really put my time into all this was a company called PandaDoc, and it became a unicorn the other day. But I used to work out of the house with just the CEO and me and the head of marketing. I was the only American who worked for the company. And it was like, looking back, it's like, oh, you left that or whatever. But I knew, by the way, they're like my good friends, and I'm so excited to see them in the news. But it's like, I knew that I wasn't done with what I was doing. So you got to, there's some of that cliche, follow your heart. And then also, when you're out of money, you're out of time. There's also follow that too.
And with that super optimistic note, I don't know if it's sarcastic or not, Dustin, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, sir. We shall talk again.
We will. Cheers.
All right. See you.